Good morning, everyone. So here we start with the remaining of chapter 6. We already started with this chapter in the last class. So we finished with the introduction and a few concepts on wireless networks. So now we will continue with this chapter, and hopefully we will finish this chapter today. Alright, so today we are going to talk about wireless links, their characteristics, and then IEEE 802.11, which is the code for the wireless LANs. 802.3 is the code for the wired LANs, that means Ethernet. So wireless LANs, Wi-Fi, the more commonly called as Wi-Fi, we are going to talk about that. Wireless link, it is different from the Ethernet. There are many number of differences between wired and the wireless link. The important differences between wired and the wireless link are, first one is decreasing signal strength. Now electromagnetic radiation, it attenuates means it degenerates, it loses its strength when it passes through any kind of matter. So when the signal is traveling in the wire, it degenerates its strength. Even in the free space also, the signal will disperse, it will scatter, resulting in the decrease in the signal strength. So as the signal travels few distance, it starts losing its strength. So wireless link suffers from a much more amount of decreased signal strength. Interference from other sources, radio sources transmitting in the same frequency band, they will interfere with each other. Standardized wireless network frequencies are 2.4 gigahertz, which are shared by the other devices also. So when various devices are communicating, their frequency band will interfere with each other. For example, 2.4 gigahertz wireless band is used by phones and other wireless devices, and they transmit in the same frequency band. So wireless LANs, user talking on a 2.4 gigahertz wireless phone can expect that neither the network nor the phone will perform particularly well. So there will be an interference also. Multipath propagation. Multipath propagation occurs when the portion of the electromagnetic wave reflect off objects on the ground, and they take different paths of different length between sender and the receiver. So radio signal, in a sense, it reflects off the object arriving at destination at different times. So this results in blurring. So this results when the signal is received at the receiver, the signal blurs. Blurs means it fades. So moving objects between sender and the receiver can cause multipath propagation much more, or it can change over the time. Next is a signal to noise ratio. Signal to noise ratio. The signal to noise ratio is a measure of the strength of a received signal and the noise, because we know that when the signal is transmitted, there are many different factors that there is noise also, noise of the electrons, outside noise, because of the heating also, there may be external noise also. So it is the ratio, signal to noise ratio is the ratio of the received signal and this noise. Signal to noise ratio is measured in decibels. So the unit of measurement is decimals. Larger signal to noise ratio, easier to extract signal from a noise, is a good thing. So if the signal to noise ratio is a big number for a certain signal, it's a good thing, because signal can be easily extracted from the noise. Signal to noise ratio may change with the mobility, it may change with the medium also, with the medium also. So signal to noise ratio makes it easier for the receiver to extract the transmitted signal from the background noise. Alright, next is the wireless network characteristics. So here we are going to talk about two things. First one is the hidden terminal problem, and the second one is the signal attenuation problem. Attenuation is the signal fades, the fading of the signal, or signal loses its strength. That is called as the attenuation. Alright, so here we are going to talk about wireless network characteristics. Now multiple wireless senders and receivers, they create additional problem beyond the multiple access. So what are the problems which are created by the multiple wireless senders and the receivers. First is the hidden terminal problem and second is the signal attenuation. Attenuation means fading of the signal strength. So what is hidden terminal problem? Now if we have a diagram over here, we have three systems A, B and C. Each system has its own each system has its own signal strength. We know that the situation in the case of wireless transmission is not that simple. Now what is hidden terminal problem? Suppose that in this figure A is transmitting to station B. Now if you see, B is in between A and C. So suppose that A wants to send some data to B, and also C is also sending some data to B. C is also sending some data to B. Now C is being hidden from A and A is being hidden from B. So with the so-called hidden terminal problem, physical obstructions in the environment may prevent A and C from hearing each other's transmission. So there may be obstructions or there may be some hindrances between A and C, because of which A may not hear that C is sending some data to B, and because of this A may also not hear that C is sending some data to D. So hence, for example, there can be a mountain, there can be a building which may prevent A and C from hearing each other's transmission, even though A and C transmission are indeed interfering at destination B. So this is called as the hidden terminal problem. So B and A can hear each other, B and C can hear each other because the signal strength of B and A is nearby, the signal strength of B and C is hereby. A and C cannot hear each other means that A and C are unaware of their interference at B, because when two stations are simultaneously sending some data to a station, so their data will collide and it will be dropped. Can you kindly recall the collision of data problem we studied in the previous chapter. Now coming to the signal attenuation. Now we come to the signal attenuation, or we call it as the fading of the signal. A second scenario that results in undetectable collision at the receiver results because of the fading of the signal strength. Now in this figure, if you see A and C, they are placed such that their signals are not strong enough to see each other. Now B is placed in between. The signals of A are strong, they can reach up to B. Signals of C are strong, they can reach up to B, but A's signal strength cannot reach up to C, and C's signal strength cannot reach up to A. So A and C are placed, their signal strength are not so strong to detect each other transmission, but their signals are strong to interfere with each other at the station B. So hidden terminal problem and the fading of the signal make multiple access in a wireless network considerably more complex than in a wired network. So kindly recall the multiple access in the wired network. So in this case, the hidden terminal, because of the hidden terminal and fading of the signals, the multiple access is made much more complex. So signal attenuation is you can see from here how signal attenuation and hidden terminal, they pose a problem in the wireless transmission. Next we will talk about wireless LANs, which is the Wi-Fi. Alright, so wireless LANs and Wi-Fi, this is our next topic now. Alright, so we are going to talk about the wireless standards over here. Although many technological and standard wireless LANs were developed in 1990s, one particular class of a standard emerged as a outcoming winner, and it was IEEE 802.11 or 11 wireless LAN. It is also called as Wi-Fi. So in this, now we are going to talk about it. We are going to talk about the various standards. The three 802.11 standards. There are several 802.11 standards for the wireless technology. So which are 802.11b, 802.11a, 802.11g and 802.11n. So the standards are A, B, G and N. Now, what is their various characteristics, or what is the difference, or what are their the major differences at the physical layer, or their characteristics at the physical layer? 802.11b, the frequency range is 2.4 to 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, and it uses up to 11 mbps. Data rate of this is up to 11 mbps. 802.11a, the range is from 5 to 6 gigahertz and the data rate is up to 54 megabits per second. 802.11g, the range is from 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, and range means the bandwidth, and the data rate is again 54 megabits per second. 802.11, it uses multiple antenna, and the range is from 2.4, same as 802.11 and 802.11b, which is 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, but it can transmit 200 megabits per second, quite a faster. The common thing about these standards, these various wireless LAN standards, is that they all use CSMA CA for multiple access. Now, what is CA? We have talked about CSMA in the last chapter. Carrier sends multiple. Carrier sends multiple access, and CA stands for collision avoidance for multiple access. All have base station and they have the ad hoc network versions also. So all these standards, they have the base station, that means the infrastructure wireless LANs, and the ad hoc network versions also. So we are going to talk about 802.11 LAN architecture, local area network. So we have the wireless host that communicates with the base station. So what is it? The fundamental building block of the 802.11 architecture is the basic service set. Basic service set. If you see BSS, if you see here BSS. Now what is BSS? Basic service set. Now basic service set consists of one or more wireless stations and a central base station, which is called as the access point. So basic service set consists of at least one access point and more than one wireless LAN stations which can connect to the access point. So this is called as the basic service set. Now basic service set, if you see here in the infrastructure mode, it consists of the wireless host and the access point, which is called as the base station. Now host must associate with the base station. Now if you see over here, here in the figure, it is shown two basic service set. In the basic service set 1, we have one wireless access point, and there are four hosts which are connected to the access point, 3 laptops and 1 mobile phone. In the basic service set 2, we have one access point, which is the wireless router, and there are 5 hosts which are connected to the access point. There are 3 laptops and 2 mobile phones. Now these access points, they are connected to the hub or a switch or a router, and with the help of switch or hub or the router, it is connected to the internet. Now in a typical home network, there is one access point and a router which are mostly integrated together as a one unit that connects the basic service set. Now just like with the Ethernet service devices, 802.wireless station, it has a 6-byte MAC address that is stored in the firmware of the station's adapter. So just like in your PC you have a MAC address, same way with this the adapter, the wireless adapter, it also has a 6-byte MAC address which is stored in the station's adapter. Each access point also has a MAC address. Now Ethernet device, wireless devices also, and the access point also has a MAC address. So meaning is all these hosts also and the wireless access points, they have a MAC address. Now wireless LANs that deploy access points, they are often referred to as the infrastructure wireless LANs, which we talked about in the previous topic. So with the infrastructure being the access points along with the wired Ethernet infrastructure, it connects the access points. So moving further. Alright, now we move further how the collision detection, collision avoidance is done. So we have to multiple access. The purpose here is to avoid the collisions when more than two nodes they are transmitting at the same time. So 802.11 CSMA, it senses the channel before transmitting any, and 802.11 it does not have any collision detection. So CSMA does not provide any collision detection, so it is very difficult to sense the collisions when transmitting due to the weak signal strength, and it cannot sense all the collisions in any case because we know that there are hidden terminal problems with attenuation of the signal. So collisions cannot be sensed if we are using only CMA. So goal while using multiple access with 802.11 is to avoid the collision. So we use a protocol called CSMACA. CSMACA, CA stands for collision avoidance. So carrier sense multiple access collision avoidance. So we use here a protocol which is called as collision avoidance to avoid any collisions of the data. Alright, now how does it works? How does it works in case of 802.11? How the sender how it works at the sender side and at the receiver side. So first of all, we will talk about the sender side. How does it works at the sender side? Now, at the sender side, as we know with the CSMA protocol, before sending any data, the station first of all senses the channel. If the channel is empty, then only the sender or the station will transmit the data. If the channel is not idle, it will not transmit the data. This was CSMA. Now with the collision avoidance, what is the technique? The first basic thing remains the same. That means before transmitting, the station first of all senses the channel. Now if the channel is idle, that means no one is transmitting. So now the station will wait for some period of time. Now for example, this is a sender receiver, it wants to transmit data. So as we know with the CSMA, the rule is before sending anything, sender have to sense the channel. If the channel is empty, it can start sending it. Same thing it does, but how does the collision avoidance works over here? We will know over here. So when the sender senses that the channel is idle, it will not start transmitting the data as it is. It will wait for a few amount of time, that is called as DIFS, DCF interframe space, distributed interframe space. So it will wait for a short time, which is called as the DCF interframe space. After waiting for the DIFS, it will start sending the data. But if it senses the channel is busy, then what it will do? If it senses the channel is busy, then what it will do? It will start random back of time. That means the station chooses some random number and counts down this value when the channel is sensed idle. So while the channel is sensed busy, the counter value remains the frozen. So timer counter counts down while the channel is idle. Now when the timer expires, it transmits. So if no acknowledgement when the timer expires, it again senses the channel. If no acknowledgement is received, what it does, it increases the random back off interval. Random back off interval is nothing but a random number generated for which it will wait for few milliseconds. So it will keep on sensing the channel unless and until the channel is busy. So a channel is free. So after the channel is free, then it will wait for few seconds, which is called as DIFS time, and then it will transmit the entire frame. This was the case at the sender side. Now at the receiver side. Receiver side, two things can happen. If the frame received is okay, so now receiver has to send the acknowledgement. So if the frame received is okay, it will return the acknowledgement after waiting for, so when the data has been received by the receiver and the data is received is perfectly fine. So now receiver will wait for few milliseconds or few amount of time called as SIFS. SIFS stands for short interframe space. After waiting for short interval of time, which is called as SIFS, receiver will send the acknowledgement to the sender. Now SIFS is equal to DIFS. The meaning is it does not send the data, or the acknowledgement sender does not send the data immediately when it sends the channel idle. Rather, it waits for few amount of time. That waiting time is called as DIFS. Now it can be any milliseconds, it can be 2 milliseconds, it can be 4 milliseconds, or it can be any number. Same thing happens with the receiver. When the receiver receives the data and the data is found to be okay, receiver does not send the acknowledgement as at the same moment. Rather, it waits for maybe few milliseconds, and that waiting time is called as the SIFS. So it returns the acknowledgement after SIFS. Acknowledgement is needed due to the hidden terminal problem. So DCF and SIFS. SIFS is referred to the SIFS is the amount of time which a receiver waits before sending the acknowledgement, and DIFS is the time for the sender. Now, how to avoid the collisions? Now, idea here is allow the sender to reserve a channel rather than the random access. Okay. So in order to avoid the problem, 802.11 protocol allows a station to use a frame called RTS and CTS. RTS control frame and CTS means clear to send control frame, to reserve the access of a channel. So when a sender wants to send a data frame, it can first send a RTS frame to the access point. Access point indicating the total time required to transmit the data frame and getting the acknowledgement. So when access point receives the RTS frame, it responds by broadcasting clear to send frame. So CTS frame. This CTS frame serves two purposes. It gives the sender explicit permission to send and also instruct the other stations not to send for that amount of time. So before sending any data, sender first of all transmits a small packet which is called as RTS request to send to the base station using CSMA. It may be like many senders are sending the RTS request to the base station at the same time. RTS may still collide with each other. A base station broadcasts the clear to send message in response to the RTS. So if you see over here, now sending of a RTS is from station to the access point or the base station. So it's one-to-one unicasting. But in case of clear to send is a broadcasted packet. So that means it will be received by all the stations. So for example, I have a station called A, I have a station called B, I have a station called C. Now this is a wireless access point. Now let's assume that station A wants to transmit. So first of all, station A will send RTS packet to the access point. This is the access point, or this is the base station. Now when base station receives the RTS packets, this means that station A wants to send some data to some other station, maybe F. Now after receiving RTS packet from the station A, what base station will do? Base station will send the CTS packet. CTS packet will be broadcasted. That means it will be sent to all the stations in that access points range. The purpose of broadcasting the CTS packet, the first is it gives station A the explicit permission that it can start sending its data. Secondly, it also warns the other stations, which is B and C, that they should refrain from sending the data. That means they should defer their transmission. So this is a way to avoid data frame collisions completely using small reservation packets. Okay, let's look at it over here. So what happens over here is, so first of all, A sends A sends the access packet, RTS packet. Now RTS packets may collide over each other. Now in your book there is a figure, some different figure is given, 6.12 on page number 572. You can refer from that figure. Now in that figure, you can refer that there are three stations, and there is a access point. Now for example, if I say, for example, in this figure also, first station broadcasts the RTS frame, which will be heard by all the stations in its circle, including the access point also. Then access point will respond with the CTS frame, which is heard by all the stations within its range. It will be actually broadcasted. So after it is broadcasted, the other stations will refrain from transmitting the data specified in the CTS frame. So RTS, CTS, data and acknowledgement frames. You can check in the figure number 6.12, which shows a very clear picture. So how it happens is, for example, if a system wants to send data, first of all it will sense the channel. If the channel is idle, it will wait for a few amount of time, which is called as the DIFS. Then it will send the RTS frame to the access point first of all. So after sending the RTS frame to the access point, now access point when receives the RTS frame, it waits for few amount of second, which is called as SIFS. Then it sends the clear to send CTS packet to the to that particular station. Now when it sends the CTS packet, that CTS packet will be broadcasted to all other stations which are present in that range. After the station receives the CTS packet, it waits for a few amount of time and then it starts sending the data to the station. After when the receiving node receives the data, that receiving node waits for a few amount of time, and the other nodes which are present in the access point range, now they will defer their data transmission. That means they will not be allowed to send any data to the time specified in the clear to send frame, which was sent from the access point to the station A. So after receiving the data, now the receiving station can send the acknowledgement, and that acknowledgement will be heard by all the stations. So if you see in this figure also, when the CTS frame is sent to this system, this host A, now until that time when the CTS frame is sent, it is broadcasted. It is also sent to system B also. So now at this point, system B, even if it has some data to send, it will refrain from sending the data unless and until A has started sending the data. Now after A receives CTS frame from the access point, it will send the data, and after it will receive the acknowledgement, then only the other systems in the access point range, for example B or system C or D, they can start sending the data. Now the purpose of RTS CTS frame, now it can improve the performance. How it can improve the performance? It is actually very important, and these are actually very important frames in terms of the wireless networks. They can improve the performance. How they can improve the performance? Hidden station problem is mitigated, because as long as data frame is transmitted, only after that channel is reserved. So because channel is reserved for sending the data. Second thing is RTS and CTS frames, they are very short. So collision involving an RTS or CTS frame will last only for very short amount of time, and once RTS and CTS frames, they are correctly transmitted, followed by data and acknowledgement can be transmitted without the collision. So in a way, RTS and CTS frames help in normally avoiding the collisions as much as possible. So they are very important, and they improve the performance of the wireless LANs by avoiding the collisions. So this was all about chapter 6, and we have finished with our syllabus. So thank you so much.